What's up guys, Josh here, and in today's video, we're reviewing the HP Pavilion Gaming Desktop with a Ryzen 3 5300G and an RX 5500. And this is the exact same gaming PC that we're giving away for our 5,000 subscriber giveaway. So I'll put a link in the video description for the giveaway announcement video. In that video, you'll find a link to a tweet. All you have to do is like and comment on that tweet in order to get entered for your chance to win this HP Pavilion Gaming Desktop. But as you can see, we have this thing already started up. We've gamed on it a little bit, but let's take a trip back in time a few hours to when we first started this thing up. I'll show you guys a quick upgrade that we did to this thing before we even booted into Windows, how we got this thing ready to game on, and some of the unwanted software that comes with this HP Gaming Desktop. So let's show you guys exactly what I did. Before we even turn this PC on, I want to do a quick upgrade to the storage. So we're going to install a 1TB SSD in here, and that's mainly just going to be for our game library. So this is just for testing purposes. Whoever ends up winning this PC, this will be a great upgrade that I do recommend, whether it's an HDD or an SSD. Just getting more storage space into this PC will be awesome. Having a 256 gig NVMe is great for just pure speed, running Windows, having a couple games on there, photos, documents, things like that. But for a larger game library, you're going to want to have a bigger SSD or HDD in the system. I'm not going to touch RAM or anything like that, but that would be my second upgrade to the system if I were to do anything. So if you wanted to install two 8 gig DIMMs to get 16 gigabytes of RAM in here, that would be a perfect upgrade. I would recommend just starting it up as is with the system configured from HP, just to make sure everything works and there's no issues with the CPU or the GPU. But once you have that checked out, it's an awesome upgrade to throw some extra RAM in here. But let's get started and throw this SSD in here. So like I mentioned in the initial giveaway video, you already have your SATA power and SATA data cables in place from the factory, and you have mounting places for both an SSD and an HDD. But let's do this real quick. For the purposes of this video, I'm not going to fully install this thing. It'll be fine where it is, just sitting in place. Of course, you're going to want to fully install yours. But like I said, this will be a great initial upgrade just to get your PC off the ground and get a nice set of games on your PC. But let's get this thing turned on, jump into Windows, and show you guys exactly how to get started with your new gaming PC. So now that we're booted into Windows, let's just take a quick look at the specs of this PC. So I'm just going to first jump into Task Manager. This will give us just a quick overview of exactly what we're dealing with. So when we jump in here, we can see we have an AMD Ryzen 3 5300G. So the newest generation of APUs from AMD, 4 cores, 8 threads, running at a base clock of 4 gigahertz, up to around 4.3. So you can see all our cores pretty much running at that 4 gigahertz mark. And now we have 8 gigs of memory in the system. So this would be a perfect place to upgrade, like I mentioned, jumping up from 8 to 16 or even 8 to 32 gigs in this build. We have our 256 gig NVMe drive. And we also have the SSD that I installed with all of our games on it. So now you can see we have 2 GPUs in this system. The first, GPU 0, so just an AMD Radeon graphics, and this is the built-in graphics from the APU. And then our GPU 1 is our AMD Radeon RX 5500, 4 gigs of VRAM. As you can see, we're sitting at around 20% utilization, and that's because we're screen recording with OBS, and we're using AMD hardware encoding to do that recording. So overall, pretty good temps, sitting at right around 43 degrees C on the package. GPU temp down here reading 34, but we'll use Hardware Monitor to get a better idea of temps when we do eventually jump into some games. Overall, specs are pretty good on this system. You have 4 cores, 8 threads on your CPU, 4 gigs of VRAM, and this system comes in at under $700. So when I first picked this thing up, it was at $650. Recently, you can get it for like around $550 from HP, so that link will be in the description below as well. So overall, a pretty good system to just get started with gaming. 1080p, 60 FPS pretty easily, but of course we'll check that once we do hop into some games. But overall, pretty impressed with the overall system. But now let's take a look at the software that comes with this PC. So being that it's coming from one of the big OEMs, the Dells, the HPs, we're definitely going to find some bloatware on this gaming PC. So just quickly looking at this PC, as you can see, we have an Amazon shopping app already pre-installed in the taskbar. You have your HP Omen gaming hub, that is there as well. If we take a look in the Windows menu, you can see we have some random things from ExpressVPN, all of the HP built-in apps. So that would be HP Smart for printing, HP Audio Center, HP Support Assistant. It comes with free McAfee off the start. You have LastPass here. So there's just a bunch of apps pre-installed that you may or may not use. So let's take a deeper dive into the HP Omen Gaming Hub. This will be how we control all the lighting effects on the PC, get overall system stats, things like that. This is one of the tools that is coming out of the factory from HP. So as you can see, you have My Gear. You can also go to your Pavilion Gaming Desktop over on the left. And this is where you can just see some of your basic stats. So GPU utilization, CPU utilization, temps, just a small level of hardware utilization in this app. You can also see memory utilization and your download speeds, things like that. But you can also do all of your lighting effects. So for the most part, it's just a green light on the front of our PC, but you do get to control whether it's a static light, always on. You can do some animations. You have breathing and blinking. Let's just keep it with static for right now and keep the green always on. So overall, not the craziest app ever. You also can look at your games they have installed and launch everything from one place. Not my favorite. I probably won't use this at all. Whoever wins this gaming PC might want to use it, however. So this is something that you do have at your disposal. And then we also have our Radeon software, just so that we can do any driver updates that we need to do, gets more info on our hardware. And we can also use any of the other capabilities of the Radeon software. You can use Radeon Anti-Lag, Radeon Boost for movement-based dynamic resolution, Radeon Image Sharpening, Radeon Enhanced Sync. So all of that is here. The monitor that I'm using is also FreeSync, so we should be compatible between our RX 5500 and our FreeSync monitor. And then we can go to display. So display 01, you can see adaptive sync is turned off, virtual super resolution. These are just some other stats that you could play around with if you wanted to maybe just increase the performance of your overall system a little bit more. So let's start off with a Cinebench run and put our Ryzen 3 5300G APU to the test in Cinebench. So let's start this guy up, and I'll bring up hardware monitor as well so we can take a look at temps and utilization and overall speed on our APU. So right now, sitting around 62C on the APU, core package around 50 watts. We're looking at 100% utilization, of course, and we're boosting up to 4.24 gigahertz. So overall, pretty good speed on the CPU. And pretty good temps as well. If we're sitting at right around 64C is our high right now. We'll of course let this test run, see what we finish off at, but I wouldn't expect it to get above around 70 degrees C. And there we go. So we topped out at around 73 degrees C on our run after Cinebench. And we came in tied right around an i7 7700K. So a few generations old Intel, but also an overclockable version running at some higher speeds. So overall, pretty good performance. I mean, the 7700K is no slouch either. So for a 4-core 8-thread CPU or APU with the 5300G, pretty good performance, and temps aren't horrible. 73 degrees C on one of these APUs isn't bad at all. So overall, pretty impressed with the APU. Let's jump over to our graphics card and see what kind of performance we get there. Mainly in terms of just a stress test, see what the temps look like, and if this single fan card can hold up in testing. So as this stress test is running, the system is really unresponsive for some reason. I just don't know if it's the stress test putting too much load on the system or what's happening right now. But we're sitting at right around 1870 megahertz, power consumption around 85 watts, jumping all over the place. Junction temp 61 degrees C. The current overall package temp around 57 degrees C. So not terrible there. But overall, just some weird behavior with the system while it's running the stress test. But we'll see what happens in game. I wouldn't be too concerned about this in overall usage when you're gaming on this thing. But overall, temps stayed in line, 80 degrees on the junction temp, around 65 C on the GPU. Nothing really out of place there. So overall, you're not really looking at that crazy of numbers when it comes to CPU and GPU temps. Even with the limited cooling capacity within the system, the hardware in here is pretty low wattage. You saw 50 watts on the CPU, right around 100 watts on the GPU. So you shouldn't really be too concerned about temps in this system. So now that our stress testing is out of the way, a little bit of weird behavior with that GPU stress test, like I mentioned, but let's jump into the games and see exactly how we perform with real world use cases and see what kind of FPS we can get. So here we go. We're going to kick everything off with Valorant, and you can see pretty much all high settings, anti-aliasing at MSAA 4x, anisotropic filtering at 4x, everything else pretty much on outside of image quality and experiential sharpening. Outside of that, we're gaming at 2560 by 1440 on our 144Hz Dell S27 19 DGF. So we're going to keep it on 1440, unlimited FPS, so we're not going to limit that in game, and we'll see how we perform inside of Valorant. This will be the lightest game that we try out, mainly because it's running pretty light graphics, and it'll mainly task the CPU over the GPU. But you can see we're running 100% utilization on the GPU. We're also screen recording with OBS, which was taking up around 20% of our GPU utilization. CPU sitting at right around 65 degrees C, right around 60% utilization as well. So overall, pretty good specs so far. No real issues with temps. Utilization high on the GPU, which is limiting us in this situation, but we're sitting at over 150, 160 FPS, sometimes shooting up over 200. So I wouldn't be too concerned if you're playing Valorant 1440p. If you're playing at 1080p, you should see even higher FPS. So this HP Pavilion Gaming Desktop is a great system for these types of games. Competitive shooters will do really, really well on this PC. And we were going to jump over to Fortnite, but OBS, for whatever reason, just could not record the game. It was stuttering all over the place. But we did hit right around 100 to 120 FPS in-game, sitting at 1080p and pretty much competitive settings. So epic view distance, high textures, but medium to low settings on everything else. But let's jump over to Call of Duty and see exactly how this game will play. So due to the limitations of our VRAM, we're only going to be able to use pretty much low settings for all of the graphics quality. But overall, the game doesn't look terrible. Of course, it would look better with medium textures or high textures, but overall, the game looks pretty good, and it plays really, really smooth. So, as you can see, top left corner, sitting anywhere between 60 and 80 FPS. And this game right now is being played 1080p, and like I said, for the most part, low settings. Again, temps sitting at right around 65C on the CPU and right around the same temps on the GPU. Overall, if we're never getting over around 70 degrees C on either the APU or the GPU, can't really be too disappointed with the performance of the cooling situation. It doesn't look overly, like it's going to do a lot, but as you can see, it keeps these components cooled quite a bit, and even though we're hitting 100% utilization on the GPU, right around 60% utilization on the APU, and we still have plenty of room to spare when it comes to temperatures. So after doing all of our testing and gaming on the HP Pavilion Gaming Desktop, I can honestly say that for the price of this PC, $650 when I bought it, you can get it right now for $550. This might be the best budget gaming PC that you can buy right now. We saw over 180 FPS in Valorant, right around 100 to 120 FPS in Fortnite at 1080p, and right around 60 to 80 FPS in Call of Duty Warzone at 1080p. Of course, we had to drop the settings down to a lot of low settings. Fortnite, we were honestly able to keep it between high, even epic view distance, and some just competitive settings in Fortnite. Valorant, pretty much all high settings, and we still achieved over 180 FPS. Temps looked pretty good as well. We never really saw above 70 degrees C on either our Ryzen 3 5300G or our RX 5500. So overall, this system is an awesome gaming machine for 1080p and 60 FPS or greater, depending on the title. So whoever ends up winning this thing in our giveaway, you're gonna have a really capable machine that is definitely gonna get you started in PC gaming. And definitely stay tuned for the next video. I plan on testing this PC out just using the APU graphics, so no using the discrete RX 5500, just pure APU graphics, and see exactly what games we can actually play, whether that be Valorant or Fortnite. Probably not going to be able to play Warzone at a reasonable FPS, but we'll give it a try with our APU graphics. So stay tuned for that video. If you enjoyed the video, definitely give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already entered for the giveaway, definitely do that for your chances to win this PC. If you have any questions or any comments, definitely leave those down below. And if you haven't already, get subscribed to the channel, turn on post notifications so you can stay up to date on all my latest videos. And I'll see you guys in the next one.